Welcome to Watch the Booker Man and to the final episode in this series, a save which has run since about May 2020, so we're talking 5 years now. I've only booked 2.5 years in game during that time, so you could see that as a positive or as a negative, but we are finally here, the last show, and it is fitting that we are marking our season finale with the 10-year anniversary show of Impact Wrestling. Of course, it is Slammiversary 10. We did have a Evolve Wrestling pre-show, which I'll just quickly run through before we switch focus to the main card. On that show, we had Paul Heyman narrate a history of Impact Wrestling, which he portrayed as all roads leading to Brock Lesnar, who will feature in tonight's main event, of course. Sarita then defeated Mischief, Rosita, and Angelina Love to become the first Evolve World Champion. She pinned Rosita, who had just moonsaulted Angelina Love, to steal the victory. So a little bit of tension perhaps between the two cousins. She is presented with the championship as Serena Deeb is shown sat in the crowd very close to the title watching. D'Angelo Dinero and Roderick Strong are then shown preparing for the main event of the pre-show. The Young Bucks were with Roderick Strong, of course. Homicide and Rocky Romero then jump Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi during their entrance before Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi are able to pick up a victory. They celebrate a hard-fought win before Steve Corino speaks about his experience in the first ever Gauntlet for the Gold on NWA TNA's first ever show. This year, it is Big Rig's time to shine and take a future World Championship shot. D'Angelo Dinero then defeated Roderick Strong to retain the Evolve Wrestling Championship. The Young Bucks were trying to cheat during the match, but were thrown out. This appeared to throw Roderick Strong off his game plan, and D'Angelo Dinero retained the Evolve Wrestling Championship and hypes the crowd, saying that this may not be the last time that we've seen him on tonight's show. That's the Evolve Wrestling pre-show out of the way, and we see on screen a fantastic 9-match card. I think we've built really well for this pay-per-view, and I think rather than going through everything now, we may as well go through it live. The final show in the save. Let's get into it. I hope that it can be a good one. We've gone for all the bells and whistles, as you can see at the top of the screen here. It's going to be 3.5 hours long, so let's hope that, like I said, we can deliver. And we start off very well as we begin with the video package we showed earlier, basically the Paul Heyman one, taking a retrospective look at the 10-year history which took this company from NWA TNA in 2002 through a decade of incredible moments, ups and downs of course, and twists and turns, but we have become Impact Wrestling in 2012. The story is told by Paul Heyman, who appears throughout the video. We see him perhaps in a warehouse type area, and it's just him putting over some of the key figures who have been vital to the journey this company has taken. AJ Styles, Sting, Jeff Hardy, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, and many more people are featured, but the famous and iconic moments that are replayed all lead into one final part of the video package, the arrival of Brock Lesnar in Impact Wrestling. According to the words of Paul Heyman, everything up to this point, to June 2012, has been leading to this point, Brock Lesnar taking his rightful place at the top of Impact Wrestling. The commentators then introduced the viewers to the show, saying that Jeff Hardy may well have something to say about Paul Heyman's prophecy. Going into the opening match, however, Mauro and Taz introduced that we will have 2 special guest announcers for the Gauntlet for the Gold. Slammiversary will open with the 2 of them taking a step to the side as Mike Tenay and Don West return to the booth for the Gauntlet for the Gold. So couldn't have really asked for anything better to kick off our show here, and while Paul Heyman is no longer the on-screen authority, I did want his voice to be the one telling the story of Impact Wrestling, given that this save was originally built around it being Paul Heyman's young, hungry and aggressive vision for the company. We will now go into the Gauntlet for the Gold. It's going to be a long explanation, this match, I will say that now, so I'm going to put timestamps in the video for the matches so you can skip forward to what you want to see, and if going through an entire battle royal isn't your cup of tea, then I'll put a timestamp maybe around the final 4. We get the first 4 men coming out. We're just trying to save a little bit of time here. So the first entrant is Samoa Joe, the second entrant is Christopher Daniels, the third entrant is AJ Styles. So there's obviously a comment there on it being the 3 men who were in what was arguably, before Paul Heyman came in, the greatest match in TNA history, and who could possibly add to this moment than a returning star, Jeff Jarrett, the founder of TNA Wrestling. So we begin with 4 of the most important figures in company history in the ring, and Jeff Jarrett, with his guitar, offers to side with Samoa Joe. Danielson and AJ obviously opposition to Samoa Joe. Jarrett, however, turns. It wouldn't be a Jeff Jarrett match without a shocking turn, and he clocks Samoa Joe over the head with his guitar. We then get AJ Styles hitting Samoa Joe with a Styles Clash, followed by a best moonsault ever. Samoa Joe is then eliminated, thrown over the top by AJ Styles. So within a minute before the 5th entrant can even come out, Samoa Joe has been eliminated from the match, and he kicks off at ringside, but basically there's nothing that he can do. The 5th man joining AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels and Jeff Jarrett is Brody Lee. He lays everybody out in the ring and awaits the next man, who is Amazing Red. He gets some quick offense in. They had a match on this Thursday's Impact, so we give Red a little bit of shine after he was decisively defeated on that show. He catches Brody off guard and almost eliminates the Big Rig, but Brody Lee is able to hold on as Frankie Kazarian is the 7th man. He looks to help Amazing Red with Brody Lee, but eventually the 2 men are just thrown around by the big man. We get our second surprise entrant in number 8 as the winner of the first ever Gauntlet for the Gold. Ken Shamrock, a former NWA TNA World Heavyweight Champion, comes out and he gets his moment to throw everybody around the ring, suplexes, before going face to face with the other man who was in that first ever Gauntlet for the Gold, Jeff Jarrett. Their intense stare down is broken up by Nick Jackson, who, seeing who's already in the ring, decides that this isn't for him and he hangs around the outside for a while. However, the 10th man, Sonjay Dutt, makes sure to deliver Nick Jackson into the Lion's Den. He gets thrown around a bit. Sonjay Dutt himself getting a few shots in on Nick Jackson. Amazing Red is eliminated from the match, however, with Brody Lee hitting him with a big boot that sends him to the outside. Number 11, becoming the 9th man in the ring, Matt Jackson comes out and he does a little bit of helping Nick Jackson, who's teetering on the edge of elimination, and the 2 of them are able to eliminate Sonjay Dutt. Both men are then dropped from behind by Bad Influence, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels teaming up against the Young Bucks. However, Brody Lee is able to catch the men off guard and throws Christopher Daniels to the outside. Frankie Kazarian is able to remain in the ring. As we get the 12th entrant, it's Brody Lee stood tall, having taken down all the other competitors once again, and a man who perhaps has a bone to pick with Brody Lee, namely over stealing his finisher, the return of the monster Abyss, such again an influential figure in the history of TNA Wrestling. And when you talk about guys who've been elsewhere, Abyss is an absolute true TNA thoroughbred, and he is an original who we wanted back for this show, and I feel like him against the new monster Brody Lee would be a great little moment. The 2 men begin to brawl. When Frankie Kazarian tries to come between them, that's a mistake, and Abyss and Brody Lee can get rid of Frankie Kazarian after a double drop kick to them fails, and basically they get taken out. Abyss then hits Brody Lee with a chokeslam that keeps him down. The next entrant, another man who has a lot of history with Abyss, D'Angelo Dinero. The last match of Abyss's previous run was losing a last rights match to the recently returned D'Angelo Dinero. So as Abyss continues to dominate that field, the Evolve Wrestling champion looks to rekindle that rivalry, hits him with a DDE, but then himself down by the Young Bucks. As they look to eliminate him, Kenny King runs down to the ring and makes the save for D'Angelo Dinero. He's been looking for an Evolve Wrestling shot in recent weeks, but does have a good relationship with the Pope. They then team up looking to take out the Young Bucks. James Storm is then the next TNA original, another guy on that very first show. While he makes his entrance, Kenny King is able to offer an assist to D'Angelo Dinero, who manages to eliminate both Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson. So as well as beating Roderick Strong earlier tonight, he's also taken out his 2 lackeys. However, from behind, having just moments ago saved D'Angelo Dinero from elimination, Kenny King takes him out. D'Angelo Dinero can only shrug, really. He can't be too angry with Kenny King. Coming out from the back, a former rival of D'Angelo Dinero, Adam Pearce, and they get into an argument. Pope already annoyed, and Adam Pearce's smugness does not help him as he is hit with a knockout punch by the Pope D'Angelo Dinero, who then throws him into the ring. James Storm is very happy to see this, hits a last call super kick to Adam Pearce and throws him to the outside. We then get the partner of James Storm, Robert Roode, as the 17th entrant. He becomes the 8th man in the ring. Robert Roode teams up with James Storm. They go after Brody Lee, but then Abyss, spotting a chance to pick them off, takes them both down. There's a brief team up between Brody Lee and Abyss until they are confronted by another sort of makeshift duo, Ken Shamrock and Jeff Jarrett. Ken Shamrock appears to actually overpower Brody Lee, and it looks like he's got him out, but Steve Corino runs out from the back and grabs the leg of Ken Shamrock, who is then eliminated by an opportunistic Jeff Jarrett. Ken Shamrock flips, returning to the ring, and takes down Jeff Jarrett, and while he's being led away by referees or security or whoever, or when he's eventually calmed down, Jeff Jarrett is picked up by Brody Lee and thrown to the outside. Of course, the big men appear to be dominating the field here, and we are joined by an even bigger man when Matt Morgan, another return, he comes into the ring, goes back and forth with Brody Lee. He is able to get out the way of an attempted big boot from the big rig and hits a carbon footprint to Brody Lee. He then turns to brawl with Abyss. So again, a field being dominated by the big men. But AJ Styles, the third entrant in the match, gets into an exchange with Kenny King. And while King almost gets AJ Styles out of the match in what will be a huge scalp for him, he is then eliminated by a Pele kick from AJ Styles when Kenny King is eventually on the apron. Jay Lethal is the 19th entrant, and he's somebody who has a lot of history with Abyss and Matt Morgan, but when both men turn their attention to him in the ring, he absolutely craps himself. Brody Lee, however, is behind him, so there's no escape for Jay Lethal until he rolls outside of the ring. He doesn't want anything to do with those three monsters. AJ Styles and Beer Money decide that they will work together. The three monsters seem to join forces, and that means that AJ and Beer Money, well, it'd be smart of them to try and do that. However, before the final entrant comes out, Jay Lethal takes his chance and throws James Storm out of the ring, so he's kind of gone out the ring, and then because he's not really the focus of the guys in the ring, he's able to come back and eliminate James Storm. So we're now in a situation where Jay, who's rolled back to the outside, leaves AJ Styles and Robert Roode to fight Abyss, Morgan and Brody Lee. However, coming out from the back, the 20th entrant, a man who previously announced for the match, so no surprise, but it is the Icon Sting. He takes down Jay Lethal on his way to the ring and then enters. Matt Morgan is fairly quickly eliminated by the Icon Sting. However, Sting is taken down by Brody Lee. During the time when it was 3-on-2, the AJ Styles and Robert Roode were taken down, so it is Sting fighting against the three men, and once Sting's taken Matt Morgan out, he is dropped by Brody Lee. This leaves us again with Abyss and Brody Lee standing tall, and after a black hole slam, Brody Lee picks Abyss up and sends him out, so he's won the battle of those two big men there. Brody Lee is left with AJ Styles, Robert Roode and Sting facing him. The three of them manage to take him down, but again, senses an opportunity, although not so smartly. Jay Lethal runs back in and eliminates Robert Roode, so it's 2 eliminations for him, but what a daft move. He could have let the three of them eliminate Brody Lee, but AJ Styles and Sting then turn attention to Jay Lethal, who wants then to join in on the attempted elimination of Brody Lee, but AJ Styles and Sting are able to eliminate Jay Lethal. They then decide they want it to be between the two of them, so AJ Styles and Sting focus on taking Brody Lee. Steve Corino, however, comes back into the situation and low blows AJ Styles, saving Brody Lee from elimination. Sting then locks Steve Corino in a Scorpion Deathlock. He's tapping profusely on the mat, but this distraction allows Brody Lee to get back up and he decks Sting from behind. He then chokeslams the Icon and eliminates Sting. Another huge scalp for Brody Lee here, and with just AJ Styles and Brody Lee left in the ring, it becomes a pinfall match. Brody Lee drags AJ Styles up and hits a big boot, but AJ Styles kicks out. He then hits a black hole slam, and again AJ Styles kicks out. Brody Lee, who expected to be able to just dominate the man who'd been in it from the start, goes to the top rope, despite Steve Corino, who is now getting back to his feet on the outside, telling him that this is a bad idea. And he's right, because Brody Lee misses the big splash. AJ Styles fights back, ducking a discus lariat as the two men return to their feet and hitting a Pele kick. Brody bounces off the ropes and straight into a Styles clash from AJ Styles, managing to get the big man up and hitting him with the Styles clash for the 1, 2, kick out. AJ Styles also shocked that this doesn't get the job done, but goes to the outside for a phenomenal forearm, which connects. He, however, doesn't decide to go for the pin as Steve Corino gets up on the apron. AJ Styles knocks him out with a very, very strong forearm before going up top for a move which I think he may have only pulled out once in this save, if at all. The spiral tap. He then pins Brodie Lee for the 1, 2, 3. AJ Styles wins the Gauntlet for the Gold, a future Impact World Championship match secured for him, and Brodie Lee, as we see, getting the most eliminations during the course of the match, dominating the field largely and setting the record. AJ Styles for lasting the longest. It's only a 75, but I think in terms of a match built around a lot of history in TNA, a lot of people who've been there a long time or people who have come back for one-off appearances, I also think we told a really good story for AJ Styles in the match. Brodie Lee pinned him last month at Sacrifice, and this was his chance to get one back over on him. Pinning the monster sets him right back on the track of where we need him to be. Some really good debuts for gimmicks, which we're never going to pay off on that, which is annoying, the amount of gimmicks throughout the save that I've set that have got poor or awful ratings or whatever. One of the first 4 competitors in the match, we put that over also. AJ Styles, the Iron Man of the Gauntlet for the Gold. He's the Iron Man of TNA/Impact Wrestling, if truth be told. He's picked up a huge victory that secures him a future World Championship match, overcoming the man who has been a thorn in his side for months. It was AJ's first ever Impact Wrestling match that saw Brodie Lee cost him against Austin Aries. So this isn't just something that's been happening for a month. This is 6 months of build, near enough. He featured, of course, in the first ever NWA TNA match, that pay-per-view back in June 2002, and 10 years later, he has opened up Slammiversary 10. His sights will be set on the main event of this show, ready to face whichever of Brock Lesnar and Jeff Hardy leaves this show as the Impact World Champion. The commentators, of course, sell the amazing stuff that just went down, before looking back at the Awesome Kong and Gail Kim. Don West going away now. It's just Mike, Maro and Taz for the rest of the show, and they put over how these women put the Knockouts division on the map across 2007 and 2008. Nobody was doing women's wrestling like TNA was back then. 2 revolutionary knockouts crossed paths once again upon Gail Kim's return at the end of 2011, but largely stayed out of each other's way. While Gail Kim went on to become the Knockouts champion, Awesome Kong was part of the Knockouts Tag Team Champions throughout the start of Impact Wrestling's run. When both women lost their championships at Lockdown, Gail Kim took some time away, while Awesome Kong went on an unstoppable rampage. She took it up another level and absolutely destroyed anybody in the Knockouts division who crossed her path, returning to rekindle the rivalry between the 2 women. And to stop Awesome Kong from destroying everybody else in the locker room, Gail Kim made the challenge for Slammiversary, standing up to Awesome Kong. Recent weeks have suggested she may have bitten off more than she can chew, but history has shown that on the biggest stages, Gail Kim, the first ever Knockouts champion, is a match for anybody, and we get a really good rating. Happy with that. Awesome Kong in particular has been the absolute star of the Knockouts division recently. The way that we've built her up, of course, her fantastic win-loss record, but just everything about her makes her that absolute top level heel. Awesome Kong has a gimmick that's getting stale, so something that I would have changed if we were continuing, but it is a 10-minute match and we just wanted them to go out and do their thing, basically. It sounds very basic, but that's what we want. Awesome Kong does kick out of an Eat defeat, and eventually with a sit out, Kong Bomb is able to pick up the win, so we're not stopping this push of Awesome Kong anytime soon. And while it's a defeat for Gail Kim, this was done with long-term things in mind, and Awesome Kong winning was right for the story. Following a highly intense battle, Awesome Kong stands over her famed rival, who fought valiantly against a monster who at this point looks simply unstoppable. The commentators put over a battle fitting of such a storied rivalry, and a 73. I can definitely say that is a great match. There can be no question, however, over who was the better woman on the night. It wasn't a case of any outside shenanigans. It was a clean victory for Awesome Kong, and with Knockouts Championship action still to come, they say that both Hamada and Mickie James must be looking over their shoulder. The winner of that match can surely expect a knock on the door from Awesome Kong very, very soon, and that is a knock that you wouldn't want to be answering if you're either of those 2 women. We then cut to the parking lot where a vehicle is shown pulling up at the building, daubed with the logo of the New Age. So their previous vehicle was destroyed by the New Age of Honor, but they've upgraded, driven into the building by the founder of the group, Jimmy Jacobs. Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black all get out of the vehicle and enter the building. The three men embrace Jimmy Jacobs before heading towards the entranceway. They're ready for their final showdown between the New Age Originals and the New Age of Honor. Their match will be a Falls Count Anywhere match, with the losing faction being forced to disband. So I just wanted to put a special spotlight on these three men who, since Bound for Glory 10-10-10, have meant so much to the company and so much to this save, and they face the other side of the New Age, and it's a really good match. Again, 81 I'm very happy with. Looking at some of the individual performances, it's actually the New Age of Honor who are much better, but what I'd like sort of to base the archetype of this match off is the Evolution v Shield matches, particularly the Falls Count. I think it was a Falls Count Anywhere or a street fight, some kind of match where there was completely no rules. We have Tyler Black taking a crazy bump, a jump off a part of the set is what I'm imagining, through some tables to take out a member of the New Age of Honor and getting the crowd buzzing. I'm really happy with how this match has come out. Great wrestling and good heat, but it is the New Age Originals who defeat the New Age of Honor. I was never going to break up the three men who started this movement. Tyler Black in 18 minutes and 44, pinning Austin Aries with a blackout, and the way it comes down to it is that the Kings of Wrestling are able to take the American Wolves out of contention, and Austin Aries tries to fight against the three men but just finds himself stuck, being punched from pillar to post, and eventually, after being hit with discus elbows, uppercuts and every other move you can think of, Austin Aries is left absolutely out cold after a blackout stomp from Tyler Black. So again, in a sense, that's keeping Austin Aries strong, in that it took all three men hitting their best shots to keep him down. But that is the end of the New Age of Honor. The New Age Originals regroup in the ring, having picked up the win and brought an end to this civil war once and for all. Coming out from the back, although I forgot to put him on screen for some reason, I think he might still be one of the wrestlers' managers, so that might be okay. Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black are joined by Jimmy Jacobs, and they hug the men who brought him to the company 18 months ago. With a long, exhausting rivalry behind them, the commentators put over that basically we're only just beginning with the New Age Originals, or just the New Age as they should be known, because they are the last men standing from this war. And I felt like, again, we needed to give the spotlight to these three men who have been such a vital part of that vision. Young, hungry and aggressive, you're looking right at them. We then get a quick video package looking back at the Evolve Wrestling pre-show. I've already been through that, so we won't repeat anything there. Alissa Flash and Sara Del Rey then defend the Knockouts Tag Team Championships against Madison, Rayne and Tara. Sara Del Rey is able to make Tara submit with a cross arm breaker. Madison Rayne's attempts to use the knockout punch are thwarted. The referee, well versed and ready for her potential cheating, and it means that the Knockouts Tag Team Champions Alissa Flash and Sara Del Rey make defense number 1 of the Impact Knockouts Tag Team titles. They stand tall, a match that wasn't really built with any sort of personal story behind it too much, so I don't want to say it's there to cool the crowd or a basic match or anything like that, but yeah, it kind of is. Jim Cornette then makes his way to the commentary position ahead of the X Division Championship match between Chris Hero and Shelton Benjamin. Cornette puts over the fact that he will remain totally neutral tonight, explaining that there are not two more other students of his that he is more proud of than these two men. When Shelton Benjamin makes his entrance, we see that Charlie Haas's wife and children are at ringside. Jackie Gaida, as she was known when she was in the business. Benjamin speaks with Jackie before the match, perhaps not a wise move, and we see that the children are reaching out to Shelton. They want to hug their uncle Shelton, and of course this doesn't go down. Charlie Haas, the champion, forgoing his entrance to run down and confront. It looks like we might not even be getting this match because Charlie Haas is absolutely furious at Shelton Benjamin, shoving him. He's ready to drop him right there. This is going beyond wrestling for him. It's only Jackie pleading with her husband that takes his attention away from Shelton. Haas orders Jackie to sit down and returns to the ring, so we're putting him across there as a bit of a dick as well, speaking down to his wife. And if the tensions between the two wasn't high enough, they are going to be as we go into that match. Unfortunately, we do lose a bit of heat going into the X Division Championship match, but it still comes out as a decent match. Haas off his game, a 51. I've tried to push him. I've done absolutely everything that I thought I could with him. Unfortunately, it just looks like he's not somebody who's ever going to reach higher than that level. A 51 is really, really poor. In fact, I might look at the dirt sheet and just see quite what it is that hurts him. His stamina, his inconsistency, his awful gimmick is okay, fair enough. Yeah, there's a lot of downsides to Charlie Haas according to this mod. Very heated between these two men, and we book it to be a mayhem match. So again, that might not quite play into the strengths of Charlie Haas. but you're not just going to have all this build and then have a technical masterclass between the two, as much as that probably would have rated better. Shelton Benjamin with an 83, and the finish to the match comes when they head up on the outside and Charlie Haas is trying to prove a point. He's in control and he drags Shelton Benjamin to his wife and children, but Charlie just absolutely laying punches into Shelton Benjamin in front of them. Jackie eventually jumps the guardrail and just pleading with him to stop. Even she thinks this is too far. She too doesn't know what's gotten into him and she begs him to stop. In this distraction, Shelton is able to push Charlie into the steel steps, and then when we get back into the ring, he is able to pick up the victory. Says with a pay dirt. I kind of like the idea of him winning with a super kick. Either way, Shelton Benjamin is the new X Division champion, and it's Haas's own anger and frustration and the fact that he was in control and decided to throw it away to try and make a point. And again, we're just putting over that he is this really bitter, twisted, horrible person at this point, and hopefully that came across well, because we are going to have to do a bit of a rebuild after he has now lost the X Division Championship to Shelton Benjamin. He, of course, delighted with the victory, a man who took him out of action, who turned on him 3 months ago, and then he missed 2 months of action. So it was as much about the personal issue as it was about the championship gold, as much as we don't want to put down the X Division, of course, despite it being a cathartic moment of revenge. Obviously, this is a man who is the perfect embodiment of an X Division athlete. Now, it might have been nice to end the series with the title on a TNA original, but to me, the idea of, if we're saying what would have come next, of course the series is coming to an end and I'm going to do my future plans video, but at this point we're still booking it as if there's a future, and who better to mark a new era of the X Division than Shelton Benjamin. And if some of the bigger names that we've seen previously in the division, maybe Tyler, maybe El Generico, Steen, other people like that, Paul London, if they can come back into the division, we can definitely see a new era beckoning, the gold standard being set tonight by Shelton Benjamin. And a 74 in his segment shows that it was not only the right decision to put the belt on him, but he could be somebody with overness and with in-ring ability who can do very, very good things for the X Division Championship. We then get the hype for the King of the Mountain tag team ladder match, the first ever in history, and because of that the commentators are showing us a video package that highlights the tag team division, the history of the division in TNA. It's been such a big part of the company. We spoke about building around the tag team division at the start. You could argue that I've not quite done that, but we've got the Kings, we've got the Wolves, we've got the Briscoes, we've got Motor City Machine Guns, we've got Beer Money, and then we've got the teams that we've created ourselves. So Cabana and Generico, of course, they'd worked together previously, but Steen and London, Danielson and Wolfe. So again, it's the end of the series, but we were looking towards a new generation for the tag team division. However, the commentators do inform us that we'll be looking back to a legendary tag team who will be coming out to hang the Impact World Tag Team Championships for us. So it's just a little bit of one of them segments you sometimes get on big pay-per-views, respect to the legends, and hopefully adding a bit of pomposity and grandiose to the first ever King of the Mountain ladder match, making their return to the company the music of Team 3D hits, and they make their way down the ramp. They're going to be handed the titles by the referee so they can put it on the hook before it is raised to the ceiling. However, before they can reach the ring, they are jumped from behind by two men who didn't make the pay-per-view and are not happy about it. The Briscoe brothers. The Briscoes take down the legendary tag team, looking to hijack this part of the show, but they are stopped when Brother Ray kicks Mark Briscoe in the groin. Remember, this isn't two old retired has-beens. This is Brother Ray and Brother Devon. The two men are then able to take Jay Briscoe down, with the call for Devon to get the tables coming shortly after, following a 3D that puts Mark Briscoe through the table. The two men take the championships from the referee, hanging them, ready for them to be lifted high above the air for the King of the Mountain ladder match. We then go back to the commentators, who fill a little bit of time because, of course, we do need to get the debris of the table out of the ring and get Mark and Jay Briscoe out of there. The last few weeks of booking might look like it's about burying the Briscoes, but again, with the idea of the future in mind, this would be to set up a future match between Team 3D and Jay and Mark Briscoe, which I think as a tables match or a hardcore match would have been absolutely incredible. However, now is about the current Impact World Tag Team Champions, and it is Danielson and Wolfe versus Colt, Cabana and El Generico versus Kevin Steen and Paul London versus the Motor City Machine Guns, and we booked this as a high spots match, so that's why you see maybe Desmond Wolfe with a low performance. It's kind of, with the exception of Colt Cabana, brought everybody a little bit closer, but I do think that in a 15-minute match that's built around ladders, it is going to be high spots related. We could have done Steal the Show, but we'd used that previously. I can't remember who I used Steal the Show. Have I used Steal the Show on tonight's pay-per-view? Genuinely not sure, but an 83 means that we probably made the right decision there. And the end of the match comes when we've had people in the penalty boxes, everybody's eligible. We don't need to go too much into all of that because the finish sees El Generico and Kevin Steen brawling back and forth on the top of the ladder. El Generico reaching out but getting punched in the gut by Steen. Steen likewise, and it's just looking like it's going to be a tit-for-tat situation. However, at one point, both men reach up and pull down one of the Impact World Tag Team Championships. We're kind of confused about what's going on here, and the two men begin to brawl back and forth between themselves on the top of the ladder. They kind of brawl until they're off the ladders. They're grabbing at each other. Steen's pulling at the mask. El Generico's pulling at Steen's shirt, and they eventually end up brawling at the bottom of the ramp. The bells are ringing. We don't know what's going on, and as those two men continue to brawl, we get security and referees coming down, so the belts aren't there, so are they going to have to be rehung? The commentators aren't sure what's going on. We want to create an absolute scene of chaos here. The El Generico and Kevin Steen both have one of the Impact World Tag Team Championships each. They've thrown the titles down by this point and they're just brawling in the ring, pulled apart by security, continue to get each other when the ring announcer takes a microphone. They have got the decision from the back. The footage in the back has been reviewed to see who got the title belt down first, and the decision is that the winners of this match and new Impact World Tag Team Champions, El Generico and Kevin Steen. Complete confusion again. How the hell has this happened? Two men from different teams have gone into the match and left it as the new Impact World Tag Team Champions. You may have thought that Danielson and Wolfe were these sort of complete opposites of each other to be tag team champions, but now we have people who actively despise each other. Current rivals have ended up as the Impact World Tag Team Champions. As that decision is made, the two men are so shocked that actually their brawl stops and they just sort of staring at each other. They've got so much history, it always seems to come back round to them, but right now, what the hell is going to go on? El Generico and Kevin Steen are our new Impact World Tag Team Champions. We get a fantastic segment rating there. Absolutely delighted with that. I'm just going to return to the booking screen now because I do want to check what I've set the match aims for. I'm thinking, can I use Steal the Show? So I've basically been advised against using Steal the Show for any of the other matches on the card, so we're not going to put it in there anyway. We do also get a pretty bad match, and it looks like it's due to my booking note there. I've done this because I wanted to calm the crowd because I didn't want to burn them out too much before the two last matches of the night, but I probably didn't need to do that. I did work the crowd, maybe I should have done calm the crowd, but it was a difficult decision. Basically, we get Hamada versus Mickie James for the Knockouts Championship. Hamada dominates the early goings, taking advantage of the injuries that Mickie James has sustained over recent months, but Mickie does actually come back into it and sets up for the Mick kick. As she hits that move, Awesome Kong comes out from the back. She won against Gail Kim earlier tonight, and seemingly she is interested in the current Knockouts Championship match. She gets up on the apron, which distracts the referee, and when Mickie goes for the pin and gets the visible 1-2-3, there is no referee to count it. Mickie James gets up and she begins arguing with Awesome Kong. What the hell is she doing? She doesn't want to get physical, however, because if Kong hits Mickie James, it's going to be a DQ, but she's just like, get the hell out of it. This has got absolutely nothing to do with you. When Kong tries to get in the ring, the referee's attempt to stop her means that he misses Hamada getting back up and spraying that mist in the eyes of Mickie James. Hamada is then able to pin Mickie in, again, a disappointing match. It's only goes 10 minutes as well, but it's just one of them things. On big pay-per-views, you can't always give matches all the time that they need, and of course this rivalry is far from over. But switching focus from Mickie James, we kind of want to know what Awesome Kong was doing here. She returns to the ring after the bell is rung and goes face to face with the Knockouts champion. It looks like she's setting herself up as the next challenger, so while her reason was initially unclear, it may be coming a little bit clearer right now. However, as Mickie James begins to stir on the canvas, Awesome Kong turns her attention to her, drags her up by the hair and hits her with an implant buster. Awesome Kong then grabs the Knockouts Championship from the referee, who at this point had wisely kept his distance from them, and hands it over to Hamada. Kong then leaves the ring, closely followed by the Knockouts champion. So while there was a tension between the two in the stare down, it looks like perhaps there is some kind of alliance between the women who started this save, winning the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. They've both gone on their different paths, but it appears potentially that at the end of this save, Hamada and Awesome Kong are coming back together. I'll explain where the idea for that storyline was going to go in the Future Plans video. We then, of course, have time to digest that before going towards the marquee match between CM Punk and Kurt Angle. And again, we want to give certain people certain spotlight. So CM Punk makes his way to the ring and is wearing the TNA World Heavyweight Championship and the ROH World Heavyweight Championship that he unified into the Impact World Championship at the end of 2011. But technically, those titles, as the final holder, they're still in his possession. So it's CM Punk kind of making a point to us here that basically, even if he isn't the champion in the company, he has those accolades and that history, and he deserves that respect. What he doesn't show respect to, however, is the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, which he throws down to the ground before delicately placing the ROH one at the timekeeper's desk. CM Punk looks to be in a foul mood before his match, showing his disdain to the history of the company, which is supposed to be celebrated tonight. And hopefully, I know whoever it is, CM Punk's always going to get, at the very worst, mixed reactions, but we're at least trying to put him across as a dick and hopefully set him up as a heel going into a disappointing match. 95 from CM Punk, 94 from Kurt Angle. So I am just going to check what it was that didn't really help us here. The storyline has low heat. I didn't think it did, so I don't know what's brought that down. I think it was at least in the 80s. Poor announcing, a burnt out crowd, right? So our main event might be... I was already worried about the rating that Brock and Jeff were going to get because neither of them are really ring generals, or in terms of their performances that I've seen in this save so far. I'll get into that after, because of course the focus now is on Kurt Angle versus CM Punk, and the ending to the match comes after, of course, we want just these two men to do whatever they can to put on the best possible match. Me trying to describe the match that Kurt Angle and CM Punk had put on is me getting ideas above my station. But the finish sees a referee bump, which potentially could be seen as intentional by CM Punk. He goes perhaps for a go to sleep. Kurt Angle slips out of it. He wants to hit a German suplex, but CM Punk drives both men back into the referee, crushing him in the corner. We then get CM Punk calling out to the back, but in doing that, he is hit with an angle slam by Kurt Angle, who then locks in the ankle lock. CM Punk is in severe pain, and he really wants whoever it is he's calling out to come out. Having been humiliated earlier in the night, we see the second appearance of Samoa Joe, and CM Punk tells him to grab the TNA World Heavyweight Championship and take Kurt Angle out. Samoa Joe picks the TNA World Heavyweight Championship up. He's looking at it, he's taking his time. CM Punk now is at the ropes and he's kind of leaning through the ropes, pleading with Samoa Joe to please give him the championship belt. However, Samoa Joe looks at the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, puts it over his shoulder, turns around and walks away. Maybe this is an attack of conscience from Samoa Joe, that just in this moment he looks at the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, or maybe it was something he was always intended to do after CM Punk left him in the lurch over the last couple of months. Essentially, either way, CM Punk has not got the help he expected from his right-hand man. The two men have been inseparable, apart from the last 2 months, since Punk came to the company, and Kurt is able to drag a shock CM Punk back to the ring, lock in the ankle lock, and when the referee is now back to his feet, CM Punk taps furiously on the mat. Kurt Angle defeats CM Punk by submission in 21 minutes and 48 with an ankle lock. I thought that would be the best match of the night. I think it still is. Maybe joint with the tag team title match. I'll check that again at the end, because it's been a long show, and I really thought that would be the match that got us in the 90s, because I don't think, as I said, this main event is going to deliver. Kurt Angle has his arm raised in the ring, having made CM Punk tap out in what is obviously CM Punk, if he's not leaving the company after this, as we've teased, he's not going to go down without a fight. Stood now at the top of the ramp, Samoa Joe locks eyes with Kurt Angle. We're all uncertain to his intentions, but he did stop CM Punk from cheating. Of course, if Joe would have got involved while the ref was down, Punk pretty much would have won the match. Before CM Punk can return to his feet though, Samoa Joe has left up the ramp, leaving Kurt Angle to celebrate again a cathartic victory. This man who, since he came to the company, has tried to make everybody's life hell, but particularly Kurt Angle. And in those 6 months where Kurt Angle wasn't able to touch anybody, wasn't able to get physical in the ring, CM Punk took advantage of that, bullying Kurt Angle. I mean, that's not quite possible. It's not possible to bully Kurt Angle, but getting under his skin very much, physically being an absolute dick to him, basically. Anyway, the point being, this is huge for Kurt Angle, and again, the man of the match, or the man of the save, absolutely levels above everybody else. It's a shame that the match disappoints. Perhaps it's because I did a screwy finish, or because Punk wasn't happy with the booking. He intentionally sabotaged the match. Who knows? But Kurt Angle goes out standing tall. To me, the people who have made this save are AJ Styles, are Kurt Angle, are the New Age. So as much as I could, I wanted to give those people their moments in the spotlight to end the save, as we did with Awesome Kong. Before we go into the main event match, a decent little video package. It doesn't really matter too much, but it's looking at the history of the company from the founding of NWA TNA in 2002 to Impact Wrestling 10 years later. It features clips of some of the greatest moments to ever take place in the company, and also sound bites from some of the most important figures in the journey that we've been on. So we've got AJ Styles, Kurt Angle, Paul Heyman, Sting and Jeff Jarrett on screen there. And the idea here is that, as well as celebrating the history of the company on the 10-year anniversary, it is promoting an upcoming DVD set from Impact Wrestling, a documentary that will feature all these sound bites as well as much more in-depth stuff, and a best of compilation, a 2-disc DVD due to release later this year, hopefully around Bound for Glory time, or maybe just in time for Christmas. As well as those aforementioned insights, those matches that will feature also include AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels versus Samoa Joe, Awesome Kong versus Gail Kim, Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe, AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle, The New Age versus the TNA Dream Team, AJ Styles versus Bryan Danielson versus CM Punk, AJ Styles versus CM Punk, Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe versus the American Wolves, and many, many more. So a mixture of old and new there. But we now go into the final match in this save. Of course, I'll go through all the top hundreds and try and piece together what could have made a best of DVD after in that final post series episode that I'm doing. But now we go into the Impact World Championship match. What a way to end the series. A 67 rating. Jeff Hardy does an 80 and Brock a 70, so that's brilliant. Of course, the crowd were already burnt out going into this, and I don't think this storyline heat is probably up there either. Oh, actually, that is one of the things that increased the rating. Jeff penalised for stamina. When you see how long this match is, the fact that Jeff is being penalised for stamina is absolutely insane. Brock's rusty still, he's inconsistent, and I think the crowd is just so burnt out at this point. In retrospect, the Evolve pre-show was a mistake, because I think that'll be included in what's burnt out the crowd. So we're now about 3.5 hours into the show. I think if we'd have just done the 3.5 hours, it might have been okay, but we had that hour beforehand. So yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes there. There's a lot of positives in the dirt sheet, but unfortunately the last match doesn't go exactly how we'd hoped. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about knocking us down to medium size or Brock Lesnar's run being full of absolutely shit in-ring matches. It says great heat and good wrestling, so I'd honestly, sometimes the messages you get in this game are very, very strange, but we want this match to cast your mind back to when Brock Lesnar squashed John Cena, basically. It was 16 minutes, I think, that match. Unfortunately, Jeff Hardy isn't able to go 16 minutes in this save. I eventually got it down to something that did suit Jeff Hardy, and it is a 10-minute match. Brock Lesnar defeats Jeff Hardy in 9 minutes and 54 by pinfall with an F5. I never did come up with a better name for that, so maybe we're just going to get sued because we're calling it the F5. I don't care, because this is the last show that I'm booking in Impact Wrestling history. Brock Lesnar, dominant victory, and becomes the Impact World Champion. I've probably been taking a little bit off what I wanted to say by the poor rating, so again, it's a little bit of an anticlimax, but I think that's a pretty funny way to end the series, to be fair. Brock Lesnar stands over his latest victim, handed the Impact World Championship following a dominant display over Jeff Hardy. The commentators and even Paul Heyman are in complete shock at the one-sided nature of the match. Taz calls it one of the most decisive main event victories he'd ever witnessed, and the idea here is sort of, we're billing that this show could go to 4 hours, so this match started at like 3.5, so it could be a half an hour match. and then you get the dominance of the heel, Brock Lesnar. We want to put him over as this monster, but of course that comeback for Jeff Hardy's going to come, and he does have little flurries in the match that makes it look like he might be starting to begin that, but 10 minutes, just as you expect the match to go into a second gear, we cut the legs out from under it, and Brock Lesnar picks up the win. So actually, in terms of how the fans in the crowd might have responded to the main event of the biggest show in Impact Wrestling history, it's kind of fair that it gets a bad rating. But for me, it was about the impact of the moment over actually having a fantastic spectacle of an in-ring match. I did try and set this to steal the show, so that it stole the show, albeit in a very different way. But it said, basically, Jeff Hardy can't wrestle. I think I even put it down to 8 minutes to see if Jeff Hardy could steal the show for 8 minutes. And it said that he didn't have the stamina to wrestle for 8 minutes. So he's in an absolute state on this game, it has to be said. Paul Heyman joins Brock Lesnar in the ring, putting the title around the waist. I would love to go back and count how many times I've spelt waist wrong in this series, because that's ridiculous. We've got a new world champion. The commentators sign off on Slammiversary, putting over, hopefully, the shock in the building and the implications of this victory. Brock Lesnar has conquered Jeff Hardy to stand at the top of Impact Wrestling, and 5 years ago, in my mind, Brock Lesnar was ending this show as the world champion. I think originally he was going to wrestle Kurt Angle. Things, of course, changed, but in terms of the things that have happened during this save, as I wanted them to, Bryan Danielson, The New Age, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, buying out Ring of Honor, so many great things. It's taken 5 years, but we have reached this point. AJ Styles has earned a future title shot that he will never receive against the man earlier in the evening, but the question asked at the end of the night, can anybody stop Brock Lesnar? From the evidence of his first 2 matches in Impact Wrestling, maybe not. Again, 2 matches into his Impact Wrestling career, and he has become the Impact World Champion. An 82 from a 67 main event. I'm absolutely delighted with that. I'm definitely not going to complain there. I'm not even sure how that's been pulled together, but I think the best performances, I remember it was Davey Richards, and then I think I'll go with Kurt Angle and CM Punk, both complimented on a good, and then we'll put over CM Punk as a praising for a great performance. We'll praise all 3 for a great performance, actually. No point in skimping on the praise in the last ever show. Davey seemed pleased, Kurt seemed pleased, and Punk was happy with the speech. There it is, all done and dusted. We're at July week 1 now as Slammiversary 10 ends, and there it is, the end of the series, the final show in what was the prelude to Paul Heyman's TNA, followed by the Young, Hungry and Aggressive movement, and then finally Impact Wrestling 2012. We'll just see what emails we've got left as things come to an end. I'm not really that bothered about any of this, but we get a 0.22 buy rate, which, if I'm not mistaken, I will just go and quickly check here, but I think that is our best pay-per-view buy rate yet, and it is by a reasonable margin. So you might say that the main event didn't deliver, you might say that everything on the show didn't quite deliver as we'd expect, but we do at least tick one thing off, and I think the card we put together, the hype hopefully for seeing what was a huge show, I do think that it's fair that we did that. I'll just have one final look back through our final show here. The best match on the night was joint between CM Punk and Kurt Angle, and the victory, the bizarre victory of El Generico and Kevin Steen. Like I said, I'm not going to do too much post-show stuff here because we are going to have a final video that looks back at things that didn't happen, that could have happened, plans that changed, all that, as well as some of my favourite moments and future plans for the company, and maybe a little discussion of what may come next for Watch the Booker Man. Sarita and D'Angelo Dinero are our Evolve champions to end the save. Hamada, the Knockouts champion. Alissa Flash and Sara Del Rey, the Tag Team champions. Brock Lesnar, the World Champion. El Generico and Kevin Steen, the Impact World Tag Team Champions, and the X Division Champion, Shelton Benjamin. I really like that set of champions. I was really into the champions that we had at the start of the save. I thought that was a really good representation of Impact Wrestling, or TNA as it was then, and I think that this right now shows the absolute melting pot of a roster we have created. All different backgrounds, all different styles of wrestler came together for a fantastic 2.5 run under Paul Heyman. However, that is the end of the road. Thank you for watching. Anybody who's followed from the start, thank you so much. And if you've dipped and then come back into it, because who could blame anybody who couldn't quite stand waiting 6 months for videos? Again, I understand anybody who may only just be coming back for the one final video, having left the series previously. Again, anybody who's followed, anybody who's liked, subscribed, commented. I don't ask for that, but I really do appreciate it because it's great to see. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And there we go, the end of the series. Normally say I'll see you next time. I guess I will, with that final wrap up of the series. Cheers.